Llegó la primavera JCPenney con la última moda. Piezas cómodas y ligeras. Mezcla y combina lo nuevo de tus marcas favoritas y crea looks originales que se acomodan a tu presupuesto. Como las polos de St. John's Bay con un pantalón en algodón o un simple suéter y jeans de A&A. Encuentra el bolso de Liz Claiborne que siempre has querido y sandalias que combinen. Para noches más cálidas, elige pijamas ligeras y frescas de Ambriel. Trae a tu familia y descubran lo nuevo de primavera. JCPenney. Vale la pena.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting, either through my website, emailrevealer.com, or you can just email me directly at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. Our guest today is Rodney D. Roby, and he's written a book called Paralyzed Emotions. You can find it on Amazon, and great reviews of this book. Everyone's given it a 5-star review, except for one guy who gave it a 4-star because he was upset that it wasn't long enough. I guess Rodney should have a rougher life than he's gone through already. Rodney is a right. Rodney, you haven't suffered enough yet, my friend. Rodney is a gentleman. He's a great guy. We had a problem with the recording, and he was gracious enough to come back to me here on short notice and re-record, and I can't thank him enough. Rodney D. Roby, are you there, my friend?
Yes, I am. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. It's good to talk to you again. I enjoyed our talk last time so much. The book is called Paralyzed Emotions. You can find his website at paralyzedemotions.com. You can find him at author.roby on Instagram and Twitter, and Paralyzed Emotions on Facebook. Now, Mr. Roby, tell the audience again, remind the audience, who is Rodney D. Roby?
Well, I was raised in the Panhandle of Texas, moved to Wyoming at the age of 18. I was very, very protected by my parents, particularly my mama, by God, and by my community. I didn't even know Chinese food existed anyway but Chungking dinners until I moved to Wyoming. That's pretty protected. I've been mentally ill, diagnosed, since I was 22. And I've lived a very hard life as a zombie, basically, overdrugged with thorazine, or chlorpromazine is called chemical-wise, lithium carbonate, and Benadryl. And I can remember several times I'd be with my parents, and my dad would be saying, "Aren't you having fun?" I'd say, "Yes." He said, "Well, you're definitely not showing it." Well, nothing of information-wise did I know about my illness, and wasn't being told. I wasn't able to get any information. Someone told me to check out a book that I checked out at the library, and it had nothing. It was just a thick novel. And I was so disappointed. So a couple years after I was diagnosed, a few years, I started writing letters to my doctor, hoping that she could see inside my head and see who I am and what I'm about, what I've been through, my feelings. And, to my surprise, after I gave it to her, about a month and a half or so later, she left her practice here in Casper, and she called me by a payphone from the Denver airport. This was in 1988, and she asked me to have them letters published. I felt that I should hold on to them, not do it. I just felt God's urging to keep them, not to publish them, until about 30 years later, and I dug them out of my file, and I read it to my wife, and I was crying through the book because it brought back such vivid memories and just feelings that conjured up in me that is just more than a person can really handle. And because I have a very loving wife who loves me like the top of a mountaintop high, and I love her with all my heart and soul. And she helped me through and decided that I would try to have it published. I wrote a conclusion chapter, and I sent it off to a publisher, Page Publishing, and was accepted on my first submission. And so that is how the book was born. That's me. I'm just little old me.
Now, Rodney, you said that you hadn't had Chinese food. In fact, you said you hadn't had real Chinese food until you got to Wyoming. Now, have you ever had like Chinese food from New York City or from San Francisco or something like that?
No, sir.
Then you still haven't had Chinese food. Rodney, you still haven't had Chinese food. Okay. I got to tell you, Chinese food is something really, if I grew up in New York, you know, and Chinese food in Chinatown or even on Staten Island, it's just so different from in Florida or California or Nevada, even like Los Angeles. And San Francisco has great Chinese food too. So we got to get you some. Maybe one of our listeners will send you some.
That'd be fantastic.
Right. And now, the book Paralyzed Emotions. If I bought this book, what would I expect to find? You said you wrote these letters, but what would I learn when I buy this book?
Oh, I'm hoping that people that do not have a mental illness can see their loved ones struggle, or their husband, their son, their daughter, someone that is struggling with mental illness, and it's just, you can't explain it. You can't explain it to yourself or to anyone else. And I'm hoping this book will be used as a resource, maybe even like a pocketbook to a doctor and counselor. Something that, I had one person text me, write me, that said, you know, I didn't know anybody could understand me. Now I know there is. And I had another one send me a message that, hey, now I understand what my son or my husband is going through. So I'm just very thankful for the book being published. I am so grateful. And I pray with all my heart that this book helps so many people on the face of this earth.
Yeah, Paralyzed Emotions. Now, Rodney D. Roby, let me ask you a question, because you mentioned before, now the first time we were talking, you told me that they had prescribed you with Thorazine and lithium, and then you mentioned a third drug, and you kind of mumbled it, but this time you said Benadryl, too.
Yes, or diphenhydramine.
No, okay, now, why were they giving you Benadryl, and how much Benadryl were they giving you?
Sir, the Benadryl was for the side effects from the lithium and the Thorazine. I had akastasia in my legs and just couldn't sleep or anything because of it, even though the drugs were so druggy to me. They gave that to me to try to counteract the side effects of the medicine that was causing the side effects. And so you had 3 different medicines that caused drowsiness, 3 different medicines that cause you to be emotionless, 3 different medicines that just, I mean, you're nobody. You just, the lithium and the Benadryl want to put you to sleep and calm you down so you don't have anxiety. And the chlorpromazine was known as the chemical lobotomy. It put the man out of business that started lobotomies. And this Thorazine or chlorpromazine is what put him out of business. And so, all right, I should have been like strapped to a bed or something because of how drugged I was. I was a zombie. And zombies don't run around eating people's brains. Zombies are in their own world of hurt.
Yeah, like you said, the lobotomy was actually a surgery to the brain where they would remove part of your brain in order to lobotomize people. And the average listener right now probably has never tried Thorazine. They've never been on Thorazine. Maybe some have been on lithium. But almost every one of us have been on Benadryl. When you get an allergic reaction to something, you take some Benadryl, and it knocks you out. Okay? It knocks you out. So you were on Benadryl, which is bad enough, but then these other zombie-like drugs, like you said, for 12 years. Now, how did we come to a point where young Rodney D. Roby is suddenly diagnosed with these problems and is prescribed these drugs? What were your symptoms that caused you to get on these drugs?
It pretty much boils down to one night or one day that caused me to be put in the hospital. And I describe all this in the book of sitting there on the couch, laying there with a pillow on my stomach and a loaded black powder revolver in my hand, thinking of shooting this or shooting that and reasoning why I couldn't. And I'd be telling myself, you're so dumb, you're so stupid, you're a sinner, you don't deserve to live. And then I'd play with the gun and cock it and stuff, hoping they'd go off and shoot me and kill me. And people helped. A man came over to the house after I'd finally gone to bed. And this is really, really early in the morning. And I heard someone hollering my name. And my first response was, somebody's here. Who is it? And I grabbed my staff off my wall, and I run in there and stand beside the stairs. He says, Rodney, I'm coming down. Now, I did not recognize the voice at all. And as he came down off the steps come the biggest man I'd ever seen. And he quickly saw that I was plumb out of my mind. Plum's a Texas word. I was plumb out of my mind. And he said, I'm here because your daddy told me to. Now, my daddy and mama was out of town. I was home alone. Where my sister was, I had no idea. And my sister was dating a man whose mother knew this particular doctor, the lady that I wrote the book to, Dr. B, I call her. But the struggles in your mind, the voices you hear that I believe is my own mind telling me to do things that is not a good thing to be doing, to punish yourself when you don't need really to be punished. When I was little one time, my mama told me to go grab the belt, and I knew I was in trouble. So I ran in the bedroom and grabbed the belt, and I whooped the tar out of myself. And I ran back in there and said, Mama, you don't have to whoop me. I don't whoop myself. And she said, oh, okay. And from then on, I had to punish myself when I was in the wrong or did something wrong or sinful or anything. And I would burn myself. I would try to break bones. I tried to jump out of a tree house, see if I could break my legs. I would try to walk across nails, hoping maybe a rusty nail would poke me. I rode in rodeos, and I would pray before every rodeo that my horse would buck me off, and I'd be caught in the rig and injured really bad. And just on and on, trying to hurt myself. Until it finally came to the point I cut on myself. I cut my hands and then my legs. And it wasn't severe cutting. It wasn't like I opened a vein up or anything, but I did bleed. And, sir, I have a tattoo of cuts on my leg that you wouldn't believe. All in nice little perfect rows, very artistically done. And I don't know why I did it that way, because you don't understand your mind. You don't understand where you're at or what you're doing. You just know you need help. And so subconsciously now, you cry out for help. And how that becomes conscious is you doing things that people can see to hopefully get you help.
Well, Rodney, let me ask you this then. Because it couldn't have been a secret that you were cutting yourself and you were doing this rodeo stuff, jumping out of trees and all this kind of stuff. Why would your family and other loved ones around you, like even your sister, why would they allow you to have a black powder gun?
Well, no one knew, including myself, that I had any problems. I thought I was just living life as a normal person, because my life, normal to me, was way out of bounds for someone else. And some people can understand the life I was having, of trying to hurt myself all the time, wanting to be paralyzed. Sir, I could name hundreds of times laying in bed praying that I'd be paralyzed or blind, and want God to just give it to me, Yeah. Because I wanted to go to heaven when I die, and so I felt like I had to punish myself before I got to heaven, so I don't have to.
Well, Rodney, what about, did you ever talk to, like, the pastor at your church, some of the elders at the church, and tell them what was going on?
I did not. My family didn't know. No one knew, just me and God. And it was never keep a secret. I learned that in my life. Don't keep secrets from your loved ones. When you're feeling like hurting yourself or that you need punished, talk to someone. Reason it through. I can remember actually going to an ex-drug addict one time, asking him what drugs could put me into a coma. I was so tired, all I wanted to do was sleep. And I thought, if I could be in a coma, then nobody could bother me, and I could be Rip Van Winkle and sleep for 20 years, and I'd be bothered. My perfect idea was to be in a single room in a nice, comfortable hospital-style bed with a TV and a VCR, and just stay there watching movies till I died. And no one knew I was going through this but me. And because I felt ashamed of myself for feeling these feelings, I felt sinful for having these feelings that I couldn't control. And all I can do is encourage someone that has these feelings of hurting themselves to please talk to someone, because it's not a spouse abuse, it's a personal abuse, but it's almost like it's not you when you do it, and it becomes very addictive versus cutting on yourself.
Yeah, any kind of depression, it becomes a habit too. You get used to it. And
yes, sir.
Yeah, it's hard to break out of that. Now, what about your diet during this period of time? Do you think that your diet contributed to your depression and anxiety?
I had no diet. I lay in bed for days, and my parents yelling at me to get up, and all this constant badgering, trying to make me go get a job or trying to get me to go to school or something. And I remember one time that I was so hungry, and all I wanted was a donut. I mean, I just wanted a donut. So I went to the store and bought a dozen donuts and sat in my car and ate them, and didn't eat them all. What I didn't eat, I brought home and threw against my wall over in the corner, and went days again without eating. Obsessiveness and this illness that I have is terrible, because I'm not able to just go buy one thing. I have to just buy a whole warehouse in case I run out, so I don't run out. And then when I do run out, maybe they don't make it no more, so I got to buy more to make sure I have, it just keeps going that way, sir.
Now, what about your hygiene? If you're throwing these donuts up against the wall, would someone come clean them up, or would they just sit there and fester and attract bugs?
Well, it wasn't actually against the wall. It was in the corner of the wall,
Right.
And my hygiene suffered terribly bad because I didn't care, and I wouldn't get up to go shower or anything. And my life pretty much consisted of watching TV by myself in the dark until like 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. Then I go get in bed, and I'd sleep to 2 or 3 in the afternoon and get up and watch TV 2 or 3 in the morning. And I was very addicted to the TV. very addicted. And I just, sir?
No, go ahead.
I said I had no life. I wasn't living life. Even after the medication, I could still get so addicted to the TV. I had a job one time and I got a promotion. And all I had to do was take care of the office and the duties of the office. I was transferred to another town. I lived there by myself. And I did not have a TV because I knew what would happen. And I remember I moved from one trailer house to another. When I did, I went and rented a TV. And so then I rented a VCR. And then 7 or 8 days later, the boss shows up. Want to know why my house is such a mess. Want to know why I'm a mess. Want to know why I'm not doing the job that I'm supposed to be doing. And I lost my job.
So now this TV addiction, this was during a period of time when you were on these heavy doses of drugs or after or before?
The addiction, no matter what drug I was on or off of, I have to be very careful, even now and today. Happily married, beautiful home, garden, everything. I can get so obsessed that I either start losing friends or I can be so obsessed that I can end up hurting myself trying to do stuff.
Even still today?
Yes. Building my garden, I would be out there from 4:30 in the morning to like 11:30 at night. My wife would come out the door and say, "Are we going to have supper?" And I forgot supper. I had to go in and cook supper. I've always been the cook in my house. And that's how I liked it. And I like taking care of my wife, but I don't like being obsessed. And a lot of times, obsessiveness comes with manic.
Right.
You know, and I have to be truthful. Being manic feels awful good.
Right.
I mean, you can get a lot of things all tied up at one time, and man, got it all done, and I made a big progress today. But then comes the other side of it when you go down and under.
Now, they talk about many famous artists. Even Abraham Lincoln was manic depressive too. Have his manic phases. And you're right. When you're on that manic phase, you get a lot done. Now, what kind of TV shows are you addicted to? Like game shows, movies? What is it?
Well, I just stare at the TV.
Doesn't matter what's on.
Just watch regular shows. If I had movies, I'd watch whatever movies. You had to go to movie store to check out a tape and bring it home and watch it. And it didn't matter. I just wasted my life.
Yeah.
You know, it's just wasted my life laying in bed. I just wasted my life watching TV. And I regret that now, and I'm sorry for that now. But when you're obsessed, you cannot break away from it on your own. And trying to break it is very hard, even with the TV. So you go cold turkey on the TV, and then all you want to do is sleep. And it's sad. It's very sad.
Now, what about today? We see so many people, these youngsters, you and me are the same age, and we see some of these youngsters who are totally addicted to the internet and to their phone. You know, like constantly staring at their phone all day long. And I can remember when my daughter was little, and I'd pick her up in 3rd grade. I didn't carry a phone in those days. And I would see the parents picking up their kids from school and then walking away and staring at their phone the whole time, not even talking to their own kid. Kids 5 steps behind them. Did you ever have that kind of addiction to the internet or your cell phone or the computer?
No, sir. I'm not a computer operator. I really am very illiterate to computer.
Yeah, it's probably better off.
Yes. I have one of those smart technology telephones that I've figured out how to work. But I'm not addicted to my phone because I strive with all my care and prayers to not be obsessive, because when I'm obsessive, and that's all I talk about all the time, and every subject leads leads back to the obsessiveness of what you're obsessed about.
Now, I know you're on Instagram, and your Instagram account is Paralyzed Emotions, and I know you contact me. We've been communicating through there. But what about, like, on Instagram, they have that Reels, where you can click on anything and watch those little videos with the music and stuff like that. Sometimes that can get very addictive and obsessive. Do you ever watch that?
No, I have not, sir, but I agree with you that anything could be addictive.
Good to see you, buddy.
Drinking iced tea was an addiction I had. I had an addiction of iced tea. Well, that was one of the things they tried to correct when I went to my first hospital visit. Was they took my tea away from me. And I wanted to write the editor of the newspaper and tell him about it, too.
I want my tea back. Now, was it more the sugar or the tea?
Tea. I don't drink sugar. I'm diabetic.
Oh, so no sugar. That's interesting. So you don't drink any sugar at all?
No, I drink decaf stuff, and I don't put sugar in it.
Yeah. Oh, no, but do you use like that aspartame kind of sweetener, that kind of stuff?
Yes, or whatever the store puts in it.
Yeah, that's supposed to be really bad for you, too. That's not supposed to be good for your mental health either. We're halfway through the show. We're talking today to Rodney D. Roby, and he's written a book called Paralyzed Emotions. You can find his website at paralyzedemotions.com. You can find him on Twitter at author.roby. Paralyzed Emotions on Instagram and Paralyzed Emotions on Facebook. Now, Rodney, off the air, we were talking a little bit. And again, one of your other obsessions that you had was about the Vietnam War.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I was so obsessed over the Vietnam War, about how people treated the military men when they came back, about how they always make sight that always a Vietnam War guy, And I was tormented, and I could see all this fighting and stuff in my head, and I could hear and feel like I was there. And I kept wondering, why am I, their Vietnam War was, men were dying and I was playing. That's not fair. Why was I allowed to just be playing and not pay attention to the war, and the men were dying? And I was so overwhelmed by it that it was keeping me in bed. And I would just have these war battles in my mind that would be so vivid. And it got to the point where I felt like maybe a soldier had died in Vietnam and that his spirit was in my body. I literally started thinking that way. I don't believe that way. I don't believe that's possible. But I was thinking that way at that time.
Now, Rodney, I find it fascinating because, like I said, you and me are the same age. And for the audience that's younger, back around that time during the Vietnam War, during Watergate, it was on the news every single night, and we'd have to sit there and watch these young men in the mud, and their bodies being dragged. Oh, it was horrific. This was horrific and traumatic every single night. But when I watch this, I would think, hey, Mom, when I turn 18, am I going to have to go do that? But you identified with it at your young age of 9, 10, 8 years old.
Yes.
Fascinating. Yes. Why do you think that is?
Sir, it was just something I clinged on to when my mind started getting to the point that I was actually diagnosed with the mental illness, is what the doctor told me. It was, I watched or saw or read something just as this all came about. Mental illness probably started somewhere in my young life. And looking back, I can see, yes, it was, because it wasn't right what I do to myself and stuff. But somewhere that war become real to me. And we're talking 20 years later or whatever. And I really, I grieved. I would lay there crying and praying, God, why didn't I pay attention to it? Why was I playing when men were dying? And all these thoughts of, I could hear the battle. I could see the intense scaredness, the fright, the terror. And it just was something I went through.
Yeah, it was incredibly traumatic to have all that destruction and death and trauma brought into our homes each night around dinner time, especially because there was only 3 channels on the news back in those days, and there was no 24-hour news shows. So it wasn't until dinner time that you'd see these horrific images.
Yes,
Now, Rodney, you come in contact with the mental health a physician, and she prescribes you with these zombie drugs, which created you to be in a zombie state for 12 years. Now, when your family and your friends and the people at the church saw suddenly Rodney, we saw him this one day this way, and now he's in this zombie state, did anybody consider that, hey, maybe these medications are wrong? Maybe they're giving him too much. They're giving him the wrong stuff.
No, they actually took it more personal to me. I was told so many times by so many people how lazy I was, that I was no good. My daddy actually said things that hurt me when I was going through some of this, and because he didn't understand. I mean, I didn't even know the medicine was what was wiping me out. It was the medicine making me so drugged and carelessly emotionless. But he or my mama didn't know, and my sister didn't know, and friends didn't know, other church people didn't know. All they could see is that I didn't do anything. I didn't have a job. And when I would get a job, I wouldn't last no time at all, and I'd quit and have to go back in the hospital or something. And no, nobody knew what was going on, including me. That's why I wrote this book, so people can see, that the doctor can see what's going on inside of me.
Now, Rodney, if you were in such a zombie state for 12 years with all this Thorazine, lithium, and Benadryl, how did you finally...
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me? Hello? Rodney? Can you hear me?
Hello?
Yeah, my mic's working.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, I can see the mic working. I can see the little meter moving. Now, when you were on these drugs, the Thorazine, the lithium, and the Benadryl for 12 years, how was it that finally you got off this and you got a correct prescription of medication that got you to where you are today?
What had occurred was I went back to Texas to see my grandparents and spend some time with them, and was considering moving back to Texas. So I was staying there for a while. I believe I stayed there from January until June, and had a job mowing pasture. And that's when I discovered that these medicines make you photosensitive. And I was so burned, sir, I was like Santa Claus's suit, even through my clothes. I remember when I came off the medicine, or started coming off, you had to be weaned off, was Labor Day. My parents and I went out to a park and sat there all day in the shade, and the sun was shining. It was Labor Day. Things are cooler. And I'm sitting there, I have a coat on, I have my shirt on, I have thermal on, and I'm freezing to death, but I got sunburned. And I couldn't understand. And so finally, because of that is why I decided I really want off this medicine. There's got to be something better. Even if there's not, I'd rather be crazy than being burned so bad through my clothing even. And so I walked into the doctor's office. He was a different doctor at this time. I slammed my hand down on the desk. I said, "You get me off this Thorazine, and you get me off of it right now." And he said, "Okay." And that's the one and only time I ever got aggressive with the doctor. But he took me off of it and started me on other medicines that had bad side effects. Valproic acid to give people for seizures and stuff, and all it did for me is give me the worst heartburn you ever had in your life. They put me on one medicine and made me feel like I was a paint shaker. I mean, literally going a million miles an hour shaking. And that's something else that I went through for a while, is shaking. Before I was diagnosed, I would shake so bad that my cousin was staying with us, and I would literally shake him out of bed until finally was put on the Thorazine and the lithium, and later come the Benadryl to stop that. But then I had akastasia so bad that even though my upper torso wasn't shaking, my legs were dancing a whole routine overnight.
Rodney, how long was that uncontrollable shaking going on?
Oh, sir, it started because I was going through a divorce. I was in Wyoming, she was in Texas, and it was very, very hard, extremely expensive divorce. And she took my son from me when she went down, and so my nerves were just frayed. And no one in my family ever realized that depression and nerves could be so bad that she was considered mentally ill. We just thought it was something that you encounter every now and then. And that's how we viewed it, my nerves. Everything was my nerves, my nerves, my nerves. Well, my nerves made me shake.
How old were you when you lost your son?
I was about 22. My son passed away.
Oh, no.
Here 5-10 years ago.
Oh, I'm very sorry.
He was what they called mongoloid back in the 70s.
Right. Yeah, I remember that too. Yeah. Now, but that must have been. That's right around the time. 22 is right around the time when all this real stuff, these real problems started. Do you think the trauma of losing your son is what triggered all this?
No, losing my son was not what caused this.
Okay.
That was not. My being alone, wanting someone to love me, wanting someone I could spend time with, wanting someone that could understand me and hold me, someone that loved me unfiltered, someone that I could love and put all my possessions into and everything. And I had no one. She took my son and herself and she left and never came back. And it hurt. Even though it was a terrible, terrible, terrible marriage, it still hurt that I was alone again.
Yeah, I went through a custody thing with my ex-wife when my daughter was 5 years old, and it went on for 13 years. And it was the fight of my life, my friend. It was the fight of my life. And thank God we prevailed on that. Now, what about today? What kind of medications do you take today? And before the medications, what's your diet like today?
I eat well. I am a connoisseur of my own cooking.
Okay. No more chungking? Chinese food?
No, not very often.
Hey, but every now and then, I bet you miss that chungking and you buy some, right? Because I know I did.
Well, I have, yes.
Yeah. Because I used to have that too. When we grew up in the Bronx, my mom would make that chungking Chinese food for us. And then when I grew up, I said, every now and then, man, I said, you know what? I like that stuff when I was a kid. Let me get some more of that.
Yes.
So then what kind of medications are they have you on now?
I am on Zyprexa. I can't think of the names of them, sir. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. But it took a lot of...
I'm not able to take the name. I just take them.
Yeah.
I'm told to take them.
But it took a lot of experimentation, a lot of trial and error before you found something that worked for you?
Oh, yes, sir. I've been through so many medicines you wouldn't believe, and a lot of them made me sleep.
Yeah.
Into a zombie-like coma almost. When I was put on Wellbutrin one time, I slept for 3 days. So it's not fun getting on different medicines. They say they're practicing medicine. Yeah, right. They're practicing it on me.
They're practicing. That's so true. You know, I tell you, I just remembered that we had this conversation last time about the Wellbutrin, and I had this wonderful young lady. She married this soldier. She was living in Alaska with this soldier, and they were moving to Las Vegas, and she wanted to find a job in Las Vegas and come work for me. So we had met over the internet, and when she did finally move to Vegas, we never got together for a formal interview, and they put her on Wellbutrin and Xanax to quit smoking. And 19 years old, and they put her on this Wellbutrin and Xanax to help her quit smoking. And 19 years old, you can quit cold turkey, come on. But they gave this kid the Wellbutrin, they gave her the Xanax, and she had a couple of drinks one night. She went to sleep, and she never woke up at 19 years old. So they say they're practicing, but a lot of it is criminal. And to give a young man this dosages of Thorazine, lithium, and Benadryl for 12 years. We're in a zombie state. Now, do you forgive these people, Rodney? You seem like a very forgiving person.
I do forgive them, and I don't blame them, because to be very truthful, at the time in the history of the world that I was diagnosed with having a mental illness and trying to treat it, there wasn't very many medicines in. And being mentally ill was not spoken of. You put them in a sanitarium and forget about them.
Right.
And it was just, I was diagnosed at the time that there started being an interest. There was not an awareness yet. There was an interest in mental illness. In today's society, you talk about depression. You have your Olympian people that suffer mental problems that can't perform in the Olympics.
Right.
You have lawyers that have depression and cannot work certain days. You have people that their mind starts talking to them and they recognize it as another voice, and they do weird things that is not normally done. And people accept the fact now that stuff like this happens. They understand to the point that, yes, this stuff does go on. We don't lock them away, keep them out of society. We don't make them a zombie with lobotomies. No. Now we love them and try to help them and try to make their life more meaningful. That's the society we live in now. But back in the 1980s, that was not the life.
Yeah, so true. I remember back in the 80s, they would put you on Valium, things like Prozac didn't come out till the late 80s. And today, like you said, like even my little girl, when she was like 3 years old, she went to speech therapy, and on the checklist there, they would ask us, does she hear voices? Is she hearing voices? Things like that. So now we're much more attentive to these kind of things. Rodney, what would you say to a family today that they have a loved one who is suffering and is in a zombie state from these medications, or perhaps has the wrong medication? What would you tell them to do? Find another doctor?
I would tell them to not be irate or mad at the things that they do or say, but to love them unconditionally. They are your loved one. They are the ones maybe from your very loins. But you need to just listen. You need to hear what they say. And sometimes it's so subtle, the little cry for help. So quiet and subtle. But you need to strive to pay attention and love them and help them. Sometimes medicines cause troubles. Sometimes drinking will cause trouble for people that drink. And now drinking is considered another mental illness. And so you just love the people through it, and you learn and listen, and you talk and communicate. The first thing I learned in business class 101 was that when communication breaks down, everything breaks down. So be listening and talking with your loved ones, your friends. try to understand, even if you can't.
Now, Rodney, we're almost out of time, but we see it so frequently nowadays where someone's having a mental issue, a psychiatric issue, some kind of a breakdown or an anxiety attack, and people see the only solution we have really is to call 911 and armed police officers show up. What do you think about that? Should we have another response to these kind of issues rather than having armed men show up to kind of deal with someone with a medical issue?
I actually lived that little tale myself one night. A friend of mine was afraid I was going to hurt myself. She was on the phone with me, and she called the police officers. And I get a knock on my door, and I look out the door, no one's there, and I just go back, sit down, and another knock, I go look, no one's there, and then the police station calls me and says, open your door. And I open the door, and all of a sudden 5 cops come walking in on my house. And they're putting their black leather gloves on, and all I could do is ask, are y'all fixing to beat me up? I mean, I was terrified. So I understand the fear of the police officers. But we have to realize someone has to take the front on this. We pay these police officers to be there, to be ready, and try to accept that this person's scared out of their mind. So I believe the officers are the ones to do it because they have the training to deal with someone that gets out of hand, but yet they need more training in the sensitivity area to know when to de-escalate the situation and how to de-escalate the situation. I believe it's a matter of training and hope.
Yeah, definitely more training. I would agree with you there. Rodney D. Roby, the book is called Paralyzed Emotions. I encourage you guys to go check out right now. Go to Paralyzed Emotions on Amazon.com and check out these reviews. And this would be a good book to have on your shelf just in case you encounter this kind of problem in the future. Author.Roby on Twitter, Paralyzed Emotions on Instagram, and also Paralyzed Emotions on Facebook. Mr. Rodney D. Roby, thank you so much. And Rodney, if you ever write another book, I want you to get a hold of me, and we'll put you right back on the air. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And thank you for putting up with me with all the technical problems.
Oh, thank you so much.
Good night.